Nobel Prize-winning economist Simon Kuznets once made a fascinating statement: there are four types of countries in the world: developed countries, developing countries, Japan, and Argentina. Today, let's dive into the intriguing country of Japan. How did this tiny island nation, with just 378,000 square kilometers of land, rise to become the world's second-largest economy, second only to the United States? How did it manage to quickly rebound and achieve an unprecedented economic miracle after its defeat in World War II? And how did it inflate the biggest asset bubble in modern history, only to find itself in a prolonged economic stagnation lasting for 30 years after the bubble burst? Why is it that a country can be engaged in a relentless battle against deflation, even as it continues to print money like there's no tomorrow? Welcome to Economy Quest. If you are interested in learning about the economy of Asia, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and embark on this journey with Economy Quest. The Meiji Restoration began in 1867 when Emperor Meiji overthrew the shogunate and initiated reforms that favored capitalism, marking the start of Japan's modernization and transformation. This period propelled Japan onto the path of industrialization and laid the groundwork for the development of Japanese keiretsu. Influential chambers of commerce evolved into monopolistic giants, deeply intertwining their fate with the ups and downs of Japan's economic future. You might not be familiar with the term Japanese keiretsu, but I'm sure you've heard of companies like Sony, Toshiba, Toyota, Panasonic, Asahi Beer, and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. These well-known enterprises all originated from these Japanese conglomerates. Initially, they weren't called keiretsu but zaibatsu, with the four most prominent being Mitsui, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, and Yasuda, collectively known as Japan's Big Four Zaibatsu. After Japan's defeat in World War II, the country was in ruins. From 1945 to 1952, the United States occupied Japan, aiding in post-war economic reconstruction. To prevent these zaibatsu from enabling Japan to rise again, the U.S., citing anti-monopoly reasons, forcibly dismantled them. For example, Mitsui and Company was split into over 200 separate companies. However, this was not the end. Like sparks reigniting a fire, these fragmented zaibatsu enterprises gradually came back together, forming new monopolistic groups. This time, they transformed from zaibatsu into what we refer to today as keiretsu, essentially old wine in new bottles. Centered around major banks, these keiretsu aren't merely companies but capital-linked conglomerates spanning various industries. Like a chain, they hold shares in each other, creating a closed business loop. This setup allows them to support one another. Post-war Japan saw the formation of 6 major keiretsu. By 2019, 52 of the Fortune Global 500 companies were Japanese, with revenues reaching $3.2 trillion, equivalent to 64% of Japan's GDP. Over 40 of these companies were controlled by Japan's 6 major keiretsu, showcasing their immense power. These conglomerates played a pivotal role in creating the post-war economic miracle of Japan. Between 1954 and 1972, Japan experienced an average GDP growth rate of over 10%, a stunning pace of expansion that would later be referred to as the Japanese economic miracle. This rapid growth wasn't just due to assistance from the United States. The Japanese conglomerates played an indispensable role, especially during the economic recovery. Their advantages were particularly clear: optimizing resource allocation, avoiding unnecessary competition, and improving efficiency. Companies within the conglomerates could move in unison, marshalling all available forces and pulling together to drive economic growth. However, after 2 decades of meteoric rise, Japan's economic fairy tale was interrupted by two oil crises. In 1973 and 1979, the world experienced two oil crises that caused oil prices to skyrocket. Japan, heavily reliant on oil imports, faced imported inflation, leading to rising prices, reduced demand, and a decline in consumer spending. The economy began to falter. However, it was precisely this challenge that Japan turned into an opportunity. Shifting from a production-oriented to a technology-oriented economy, Japan made a significant leap in its industrial structure. This transition brought about a period of stable economic growth, during which Japan's GDP surpassed that of the Soviet Union, making it the second-largest economy in the world, trailing only behind the United States. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, the United States was facing its own set of challenges. In 1973, the United States unilaterally announced its departure from the Bretton Woods system and decoupled from gold. The oil crises contributed to severe inflation in the U.S., with inflation rates soaring to 14%. Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker implemented an aggressive monetary tightening policy to curb inflation. By 1981, he had raised interest rates to an astonishing 20%. This move effectively controlled inflation but, due to its severity, plunged the U.S. economy into recession. The hike in interest rates had another side effect. High U.S. interest rates attracted a significant influx of international capital, leading to a sharp rise in the dollar's value. As the dollar strengthened, the competitiveness of U.S. exports weakened, resulting in a significant trade deficit. During this time, Japan's cost-effective electronics and fuel-efficient cars became highly sought after, leading to a surge in exports to the United States. This caused quite a panic in the U.S., leading to a trade war with Japan. The U.S. imposed limits on the number of Japanese products that could be imported and slapped a 100% tariff on Japanese goods. However, these measures proved ineffective. So, the United States devised a new strategy, marking a turning point in Japan's economic narrative. On September 22, 1985, the United States, Japan, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom reached a landmark agreement at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, New York. The deal, known as the Plaza Accord, involved the other four countries collectively selling off the dollar to devalue it while allowing their own currencies to appreciate. Following the agreement, the dollar began to rapidly decline, while the yen soared. In just 1 year, the exchange rate nearly doubled, going from 250 yen to the dollar to just 130 yen. This drastic shift instantly eroded the competitiveness of Japanese exports, leading Japan into an economic downturn. In an attempt to counteract the recession, the Bank of Japan quickly lowered interest rates in 1985, pressing the accelerator by cutting rates from 5% to 2.5%. This move became a significant trigger for the economic bubble in Japan. With interest rates dropping, borrowing money became easier, leading to a flood of capital into the market. When there's more money in circulation, it typically finds two places to go, either into the real economy, causing inflation, or into the capital market, inflating asset bubbles. For Japan at the time, it was the latter scenario. Flush with cash, people began feverishly buying up real estate and stocks. From 1985 to 1991, in just 6 years, the average price of homes in Japan tripled. In Tokyo's Ginza district, land auction prices soared to over $300,000 per square meter, meaning you could theoretically sell a square in Tokyo and buy all of California. Japanese companies also went on a shopping spree. In 1989, Mitsubishi Estate purchased the Rockefeller Center in the U.S. for a record price. The stock market was no exception, with the Nikkei index quadrupling to 39,000 points. The entire country was caught up in a frenzy. By 1989, the Bank of Japan finally decided to burst the asset bubble by raising interest rates. Unfortunately, the action was a little late, and the brake was applied too harshly, with rates jumping from 2.5% to 6%. The stock market, hit hard by the sudden tightening of liquidity, fell sharply. Within 2 years, it plummeted from a peak of 39,000 to 17,000 points. The housing market collapsed in tandem, plunging Japan into a prolonged recession. Over the following decades, Japan's GDP stagnated, leading to what is referred to as the lost 3 decades. In our next video, we'll dive into what happened after Japan's economic bubble burst. We'll explore the policy reforms Japan underwent and dissect the reasons behind the 3-decade stagnation. Why has Japan been engaged in a relentless battle against deflation, despite adopting aggressive monetary policies to stimulate the economy? Stay tuned as we unravel the complexities of Japan's economic challenges and the measures it has taken to overcome them.